use also somewhere at the top of your introduction the terminology that concerns the Great Famine as a name. It's going also to become a little bit easier for you in word counts. So you don't always have to say the human tragedy, this and this. Yes, it's good that you introduce it as a human tragedy, as a great event, because this is the motivation for writing this essay. It's because that was such a catastrophic thing. But you don't have to repeat it through the whole essay. It's, otherwise it becomes a little bit melodramatic. So do introduce it at the beginning, and we're good.
Perfect.
I believe that you can shorten it more here. You don't need all this kind of details, but you're going to see it at the end. What I wanted you here, what I think that it's important to notice, you say that although so much attention has been drawn to these famines, so to the famines like in Ireland and stuff, the substantially lower mortality figures highlights the extremity of the Chinese famine. I would like to remind you that the mortality rates that surpassed other famines were in absolute terms. It was not in percentage of population.
Okay.
And if you really think about the geographical scope of China, somebody would expect, that the Great Famine, it would have more dead people than Ireland, which is, just a fraction of one of the communes that they had at Mao's time. Just take care. It's fine. You can just leave it in, not like this, but you can say in absolute terms, the mortality rate was higher. So it was not the rate. So the deaths were more numerous. Yeah.
Yeah.
So just and you don't have to explain it more. Don't put too much thing in there. But like this, it's a mistake. So at least in terms of data. Although this was one of the most catastrophic. Okay, when you say this is a general comment, and this is both a stylist and style comment and content. When you say some, you're not allowed to use some. Trust me on this. You're not allowed to use some on its own. When you say some, then you always put comma or a parenthesis, such as this person.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I agree.
It doesn't have to be always a scholar. You can say some, such as the party cabinet.
Yeah.
For example, if this is because I don't know what you mean there, so who are you referring to?
Right.
So, but whatever it is, just put an example there.
Yeah.
Okay. This is general. Whenever you use some people say, other people say, and stuff like this, always an example. This is again the same. So Mao's desire for Chinese industrialization. This is a misconception. He had no desire for industrialization because of industrialization per se. That had to do with national security, national interest, and of course due to the fact that it was so highly isolated on the international stage, China back then, it really had threats. I mean, I will remind you that the communes that they set up during the Great Leap Forward was a policy to counter a potential nuclear threat. So you see that everything was around this kind of fear.
Yeah.
And the threat, of course, from the West. So in this kind of sense, you can even present it as the Great Leap Forward, not only as a failed policy that started from the Chinese government and it was for China, but as a response to the West. So it was in a sense induced by Western penetration in the long term, in the long view of the Chinese history.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm just writing this down.
Yeah, sure, of course. And I'm going to send you again all my notes. I have put everything here. So in this document, you're going to see a lot of write-ups and but you don't have to use everything, right? This is only recommendations. This is food for thought. There are some things that I would really like to to incite you not to do, like using some on its own. But
Uh-huh.
other different stuff, just think about it. Does it fit you? Do you like the idea? How would you translate? So don't feel that those recommendations are 100% whatever they are. They're correct, but they should also fit you.
Okay.
Okay. I haven't read this script here, but I will just do it now very fast because I was just up to the introduction. Great. This is great stuff, yeah. Now, it's a little bit too long. You don't need to analyze it in this kind of in this kind of way. You can just shorten it. You can just do it half. But it's very good material and very well written the way it is. Okay. Whether that was also something that you wrote in the previous draft. You used two things that are a kind of an academic no-go. One is that I stand by.
Oh, okay.
You can say, but I stand by him because this happened, and this doesn't come across, at least in the previous script. Perhaps here you have changed something. And the other thing, which is generally a no-go, whether you have a because afterwards or not, it's I believe. You are not asked to write your beliefs. You are asked to argue. So you can basically, it's just a very simple substitution there. You just replace every time you say I believe with I will argue. And this is going to set you on the right track as well.
So would you recommend just changing that to I will argue?
Let me see how you have done it. In the previous one, I have already marked it in the other script, but let me see how this is.
Sure.
Okay. My problem is with this argument. This argument, it's a not valid argument. So really, technically speaking, this argument is not valid. Do you know anything about argumentation, like in philosophy? Have you done any courses?
No.
Okay, so this is not a valid argument. You basically say that because in the past bad weather conditions had never created such a big disaster, it will not happen in the future. This is what you say. This is an inductive argument, and the truth of the premises doesn't transpire into the conclusion. So it's almost saying that because every February rains, I know that next February is going to rain. It's a possibility, but this is not true. It's not valid.
Right.
This is not a good argument. And if you want the technical thing, this is an inductive argument. When you have inductive arguments like this, stay away from them or criticize them and say, this person, so Q, is it, how do you pronounce it? I'm not sure. Kue? Okay. So Kue, for example, wrote that because of historical reasons and because bad weather in the past did not create such severe consequences, did not have such severe consequences, it couldn't be that was because of the weather. Well, this is an inductive argument. It's not, and therefore it's not valid. But there are other reasons why we can argue that the weather was not a factor. And then you are going to show the real academic reasons. The reasons, pam, third, fourth, fifth, and you're done. But this particular argument is just not good.
Right, okay.
Shall I give you another example for this? Because this is important. I would like you also to just take it into consideration for your own sake. The way you think about other stuff, perhaps. I just found my philosophy book here, and I had to open it because this is a very famous discussion, first of all, in philosophy about
Mhm.
these particular arguments.
Okay.
So inductive, those are called inductive inferences, and they cannot be rationally justified. So it's not because of reason that we know that this cannot happen next year because bad weathers in the past did not have such severe consequences. It's only because of experience. But nobody tells us, but everybody can imagine that the bad weather could have, at some point, severe consequences that we have never seen before, right?
Yeah.
So, what's the point of the argument?
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
I
Use
see what
it. Use it. It's a very good point just to assert your own voice in there and say,
Mhm.
you know, Kue argues this. Not a good argument. I have better arguments.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Good. So please keep in this mind. I would try. If there was something that I would like you to keep from today's session, it would be this kind of thing. You know, like really criticizing what we're reading and reflecting on it and really thinking whether it's right or wrong.
Yeah.
So for example, okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you see, so this is good. Yeah. So this is a good argument. So so you say that you know whether history played a role or not. I mean, who cares? You have the hard facts there.
Yeah.
You can still see my screen, right, where I am. So you
Yeah.
say, for example, the four pest campaign had this kind of result.
Yeah.
So this is what you need. I would like to point you to two more readings that you have done in the course. Because, and I will tell you the reason before, the reason is that I would like you in this essay not to have just the readings that were proposed to you by your teachers during that particular week only.
Yeah.
But I would like you to show, if it's possible and if you agree, a little bit of a more kind of broader understanding of the course, where you can really go back into previous weeks and pick what is relevant for this week.
Yeah. Agreed.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Good. So one I thought, and that was like a very. This is just some fast thoughts from me. The one was Skinner. You remember when we were discussing Skinner?
Yeah.
So Skinner, in his paper, that was week 2 reading or week 3, I don't remember. A very difficult reading. So if you use it, they're going to be impressed.
Okay.
And it was week 3, so it's like half a year ago. So half a year, 4 months ago.
Yeah. Okay.
I have it here open because I just looked for it just before we started. On page 285 in his article. You remember what was his kind of thesis? It was about the macro regions. He said he kind of divided the whole of China into different regions, and he showed or argued that each micro region had its own kind of complementary, I will call it, business cycle. So when one area had high productivity, another one had low productivity, and vice versa.
Okay. Yeah.
So so that was a really groundbreaking study, by the way. So he has a whole section talking about how natural disasters such as droughts or floods had impact on such microregions, and it says, I have here in highlighted in yellow, these findings, so the findings he presented above, point to the likelihood that extreme climatic episodes would have clustered within particular zones during adjacent years. So this is what he shows. He shows that even if we have a dramatic kind of natural disaster, because of the geography of China, the effect, the negative effect, would have been confined into a certain number of macroregions and not at this kind of broader scope that was exhibited during the Great Famine.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So you see, this fits perfectly to your argument, and it's a very nice way to show a little bit of smartness. That okay, we go back to previous readings. I have everything in my head, and we do all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So so you can. How would you add this here? Just an example, in case you want a little bit more guidance in terms of inspiration. Let me see the draft. What was I? What was the draft I was looking at? Was it here? I think it was here. Okay, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Here, where you say, for example, the for pest campaign, here after the full stop, here you could just put moreover. If we follow Skinner's argument, in parentheses the chronology or whatever kind of reference style you have, we can conclude that even if we had catastrophic climatic conditions, according to Skinner at least, their impact would have been confined only to some regions and not this kind of broad scale that we experienced with the Great Famine. And you're good. Right.
Okay. Yeah.
I would say I have made these comments in the other. Okay, that's fine. I will send you everything together. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Perfect.
Another reading I would like you to consider. Yeah, okay. I found it. What was the reason that perhaps you can include this as well? When they started blaming the weather, blaming the weather is also not something that people do in vacuum. There was a motivation to do that.
Okay.
First of all, there was a political motivation to do that because, they could just the government didn't want to show that their policies were just catastrophic, but it was because of the weather, right? So there was so this is how the weather kind of treatment went into the discourse in the first place.
Okay.
I have here the references. Do you remember the reading? I think it was week 9 or 8 of Bramall 2000.
I do have some recollection of that reading. I think I need to go back and do it. Is that the reading that you're referring to, Bramall?
Yeah, Bramall 2000.
Okay, I'll take a look at that.
Mm-hmm. It's Bramall 2000, page 142, if you want this.
Yeah.
And also page 143 from the same reading.
Okay.
And also you can include Madison 2007, your main reading for this course, page 62. You might want to have a look at these pages.
Yeah.
Because they all talk about this, and if you have, a parenthesis with 3 different references talking about the same thing,
yeah,
from different weeks, from main textbooks, from smaller readings, then suddenly you show that you are a student with a very broad understanding of the course.
Yeah.
Then you kill the paragraph if you do that.
Yeah.
So, but you really want to check these things, okay?
Yeah. Okay.
It's just like one paragraph in both. Perhaps in Bramall is a little bit longer than the paragraph. But Madison, I remember, it's just a paragraph talking about it.
So, just to reiterate, what was the main argument? I didn't quite understand what you meant. So they're basically saying that natural disasters did what?
Yeah. Well, they have two different things, right? They're arguing two different things. But let me find the. I think I have written even the whole argument down at some point.
I can take a look at that and then
Wait.
if it's up.
Now, for some reason, my word doesn't work. Come on. Well, I'm just going to tell you what I remember that at least Bramall is arguing. He argues that there were political motives for the government to blame the weather, obviously, rather than their own policies. In fact, they had to reconstruct the data that was available, like census and stuff like this, in order to show that it was the weather and not something else. So when we really talk about the weather, how serious are we? So are we just talking about some kind of political games here, or is it like a real true claim that we should keep in mind? So this could be just if you decide to add it, you don't have to, but perhaps it's something that you would like, to have like a smart sentence in there saying, by the way, when we're talking about the weather, we should recognize that there were important political motives for blaming the weather.
Yeah.
Which even led to the reconstruction of whole data sets.
Yeah.
So if the weather is part of the discourse, is perhaps because of distorted data sets rather than actual arguments. This is not a definite claim, but it's this kind of tentative claim that you show that you bring all the information you have about this and all the thoughts you make around that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get what you mean.
Okay, it's a little bit obscure what I'm saying here, and sometimes I just think a little bit like this. So I hope I don't create problems rather than it's just my inspirations from your own script, basically.
I think that actually works in favour, because then it draws me on to criticising, which is what I want to do. It just adds more evidence to criticising the weather, which is good. Yeah. So yeah, I like that.
Good. The third thing I would like to point out, and the last thing about the weather, it's that, just before the Great Leap Forward, and I believe during the Great Leap Forward, the Mao government invested a lot in irrigation works, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Which irrigation, this kind of great irrigation works that they invested in, they have the effect of increasing the yield by 7 times or 10 times. There is data about this in your readings, and I will give you the reading for this. Which means that even if there were bad weather at some point, even catastrophic weather, in comparison to the historical record that you mentioned before, so this is how you can make an invalid claim a little bit more valid. Mm-hmm. So in comparison to the previous historical data, we shouldn't have this kind of disastrous consequences at this point, because we already had more extensive irrigation works than we had before. And we know that irrigation works increase the yield in agrarian societies by this kind of percentage.
Yeah. Okay.
This reading is
so in a way the investment that they made in the irrigation was like their safety blanket. It should have behaved like this security blanket if there was these catastrophic weather conditions. In fact, we should have seen that it should have probably returned to pre-investment levels rather than If that makes sense.
It does make sense, and it's also a very bold claim. And if you make it, which I would say, this is your thoughts, you should put them in. Always keep them a little bit tentative, so you can write, we could suggest this, perhaps this is evident from this discussion. Just put something tentative there, so you don't have to tie down yourself into a territory that you're not completely certain about. But those are your thoughts, and this is what I gather this particular teachers you have in Marcus are going to appreciate.
Okay.
It's your own thoughts.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So these, let me see, where was it, irrigation? Yeah, this again, Brahma. In the Brahma reading, 2000, there is a whole chapter on irrigation. You should just go through it if you have the time. It's just going to take you perhaps 30 minutes.
Yeah, I'll write that one down.
Because I believe you are going to get a lot of data from there.
Yeah, perfect.
And there is something in Madison as well, if you want to have this.
Mm-hmm.
So Bramall, yeah. So Bramall 2000, so this is a page in Bramall. This is page 137, 138.
Yeah.
You can see my screen, right?
Yeah.
Madison, page 78.
Yeah.
And this is tied to another point. I will tell you later, but just keep these readings in mind because I will return to them.
Okay. Got it.
Good. Let me see now what you else reading here. So we had these. Good. So we have the weather. The weather paragraph is done. You say that, people have been claiming this for certain reasons. I'm claiming that was not the weather.
Yeah.
Because of this kind of reasons. So what was it? And we go to paragraph 2, which is bad government policies in the collectives. Okay.
Yeah. This paragraph is a bit all over the place.
Yeah, that's okay. I just need to get a little bit the feeling.
Sure.
Yeah. So I'm here at the end of this paragraph, just before I move on. So this is very good points. Basically, to one point, you can shorten it a little bit, but what you are saying here is that during the Great Leap Forward, and because of the need to industrialize, so not the blind pursuit, as you said, but I would say that was a need to industrialize, at least as they felt it. They compromised food security.
Yeah.
Because basically we're talking about food security, right?
Yeah.
So they decided to gear towards industrialization and to do away with food security. Today, of course, with hindsight, we think that this is stupid, right? I mean, who would do that? But don't always keep in mind that was not always as clear when you were on the ground and in that situation.
Yeah.
For them, it was capital accumulation. And to be honest, it was physical capital accumulation. When they started, all this kind of steel works and the infrastructure and the irrigation works. So that was really accumulating physical capital.
Yeah.
Do keep this at the back of your head. But this exactly what they did. They did away with the agrarian part of the economy. They forced the labor into urban centers and into the industrial sector, and they just stopped thinking about food security. So this is a very important point. Because but what you need to do here is to establish also that the famine, as a result of or a facet of a food security crisis.
Yeah.
So this is what is missing. Perhaps this is something for your introduction as well.
Okay.
Because the rest of your essay, at least as far as it stays close to your previous draft in terms of argument, it basically says that it was food security, and then you have, all the reasons and all the reasons of why this food security crisis occurred, which was because of policies, because of self-interest, because of all. But you have always to connect the food security crisis to the famine in an explicit way.
Right.
Right? Because this is going just to ease your way through the essay. You will not have to repeat it or to establish it later on. You just establish it at the beginning, you're done.
I'm not sure what you actually mean though. What do you mean it's a facet of the...
So that here, so for example, during the Great, I will give you a concrete example. We're encouraged. So this is what I mean. You present, this is a little bit, for me, it's a little bit disconnected. The reduction of output, of grain output, and the famine. The famine doesn't have to be because of reduced grain output. The famine can be caused by different factors, right?
Okay, yeah.
So here you're talking about something very particular, the reduction grain output.
Right. So then how do I link the reduction in grain output without jumping 20 steps to get to the great?
You just have a sentence somewhere, perhaps in your introduction or perhaps here at the topic center. During the Great Leap Forward, farmers were encouraged to make still perhaps the topic center. I will just give you an example here. Great Leap Forward policies encouraged the advancement of the industrial sector at the expense of China's food security via reduction of grain output. So this is not a very well crafted, but a valid topic sentence. You have everything here. You have all the things you're talking about, but in one sentence. You are describing how the Great Leap Forward put all its money in the industrial sector. At the expense of whom? At the expense of China's food security, right?
Yeah.
Because they just took everything out from the agrarian sector in return. And how did this manifestate itself? Via a dramatic reduction of grain output. So this kind of topic sentences are, if it was a little bit better styled or better crafted in this case, it would be perfect. But for now, I just wanted to give you an idea how you can just put everything together in your topic sentence, so you don't have to do all this kind of mind work here.
Yeah, agreed. Okay.
So then you're going to see that if you have this kind of topic sentences, very concise, very straight, very much to the point, then you're going to see that that the length of this paragraph, it's going to be reduced to something like this.
Yeah. Okay.
Because everything else, if you really think about it, it's how you try to link things together. But if you have done already this work at the topic sentence in a clear and clean way, then you're done.
Okay. Yeah, I agree.
And it doesn't have to be a clever sentence.
Just has to be.
It just needs to be clear.
Yeah.
It has to make a statement. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what I mean with the statement, I mean that X led to Y because of Z. If it has this kind of structure, the topic sentence, literally this structure, and you only put one word for this X, Y, and Z, it will do the job. This is what we want to read. The clever stuff, the nuances, and all the and how smart you are, it's going to come out from the argument and how you write the things, right? But not at the topic sentences.
Okay.
This is my advice as a writer. And this is going to serve you well in the exams as well.
Okay.
This is going to serve you very, very well in the exams. It will also keep your focus while writing. You will know what you're writing about.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. Of course, you don't need everything from here, but this is good to have it. So this draft, it's very good. You know, at the end, you know, perhaps you're going to cut this one, or perhaps this one instead, or you're going to see at the end how you trim the whole draft. All you can eat policies. Communal dining has also emerged as
So, so this bit needs to be worked.
No, here you need evidence, of course. You would need at least one sentence with some evidence. So when you say it has been said, it hasn't been said. It has been. If it has been said, we don't care. If it has been argued, it's fine.
Yeah.
A stylish thing again. If somebody argued this, just say, Sotiris argued that communal halls led to overconsumption.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be in passive voice. This is just a stylish thing, but it's going to help you very much when you have to save words for your word count.
Agree. Okay.
And also it makes it, so this is one reason that I always advise students to use active voice rather than passive, whenever they can, of course. Sometimes it's important to have the passive voice. The other thing is a stylish thing. It makes it's more direct and it's easier to follow. So imagine that I'm saying Sotiris kicked J, for example.
Yeah.
Instead of saying J has been kicked by Sotiris, you need more time to process that and figure out who kicked whom. Even in this kind of very simple setting. Yeah, and when you have a complex argument, just respect the reader and let them enjoy the complexity of your argument, but not the complexity of the wording.
Yeah.
So those two reasons, perhaps just keep them in mind for future writing tasks like email writing, if you don't do more writing at an academic level. Requisition of grain. Yeah, this is very good. I remember this from the previous script. This is very good. But I would like you to think, also reflect on the next fact. Why did they want to push their exports that much? Again, you make it sound, perhaps not intentionally, but you make it sound as that was out of a whim or something of Mao, because suddenly he just wanted to make money. It was
Right.
not, this is not true. I mean, I don't know Mao, and perhaps you know he was crazy. I don't care about this. I really don't care about this kind of stuff. People can think whatever they want, but in this kind of situation, you have to think: why did they push for the exports? They were insecure. Their sovereignty was penetrated. They were isolated, and they were under sanctions from the international community, and they were running huge deficits. So, what do you do in this kind of situation? So again, was it a whim? Was it a response to external factors?
Ooh.
Perhaps the false response. I'm not saying that it was the correct response, but it's always very important in such dramatic events to really try to get into the moment,
Yeah.
because
No,
then we can become fairer in our assessment.
yeah. Yeah. Uh-huh.
So just think about it. So how did this? I mean, that was a huge problem. That was also a huge problem. This kind of food security problem. If you don't know, it was a huge problem also in India. In India, which was severely colonized by the British, and it was exhorted to export its grain to Great Britain, to the United Kingdom today. So it was really forced into this kind of food security, so that Great Britain could industrialize.
Yeah.
So that was, this kind of export was also serving interests in the West.
Yeah.
So the moment that we have this kind of conflict of interest in there, can we really just make it appear as simplistic as this, that we just want to raise capital, so we're just going to export everything and let people die? Yeah, I mean, there are people who can think like this, but that was not the case, I believe.
Yeah. I agree.
Perhaps it was not the cleverest thing that they did, or perhaps they had better alternatives, but yeah. Okay. And I really like the way you write this. Chinese officials ignored the poverty of the rural population, instead selling the grain as if it was in surplus. So this is, I don't know if you, where you found this, in which reading, or if you thought about it on your own, but this is good phrasing. Instead selling the grain as if it was in surplus.
Okay.
Because surplus grain is a great economic kind of indicator, especially for agrarian economy. So it gives a hint that you are thinking like an economist.
Right.
So mistakes. The phone was starting to crash. So here you're talking about mistakes, Before you were making it appear as if it was a sadistic kind of thing.
Right. Okay. So okay, I see what you mean.
I think that just stick to one one kind of view, stick to it, and argue for it.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree.
This kind of, and it's going to make your life also easier.
Yeah, I agree.
This kind of, that was a very good paragraph. I remember it.
Okay.
Okay. Here you are talking about collectivization. Oh,
I split that up now, haven't I? Yeah.
That's a good idea.
So I was going to talk about the first chunk of that paragraph, was going to go into the third paragraph talking about collectivization. That's why in paragraph 2, I didn't want to give too much of a background away, because I found it a little bit hard, but basically in paragraph 2, I just want to say, just mention the policies briefly, but then in paragraph 3, I want to say what the underlying things were
Mm-hmm.
behind these policies without giving too much away in paragraph 2, if that makes sense.
Can you explain it a little bit further?
So, like the mistakes in the collectives and the all you can eat policies, the requisition of grain were all kind of, as I mentioned on the email, they were all. I tried to, if you look in paragraph 3, I've tried to do an interest statement to kind of summarize what I'm saying. So I want to say that collectivization acted as like a vehicle, kind of encompassing all these policies. Industrialization acted as a motivation for these policies, and the political economy facilitated these policies, if that makes sense. So the political economy created like the grounds and the environment to make it possible to have these kind of policies, and then they were all motivated by the need to industrialize, whether that was a good thing at that time, or whether it was out of fear, or because they wanted to. It was because they were forced into it. Regardless, it was a motivator for these policies. And then collectivization was like a vehicle. It transported all these policies.
I really like it. I really like what you're saying.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to say in paragraph 3, but that's why in paragraph 2 I found it a little bit difficult. I just want to briefly mention what the policies were, and then say, like, on the outset, these may seem like although people who don't agree with bad weather, they would argue that these policies are the cause, but really the story isn't that simple. The story comes down to the three: the motivator, the vehicle, the facilitator.
Right. So the what's the word? The catalyst, isn't it?
Yes, that's a good one.
So I believe that this is the money of your argument. It's this one, right?
Yeah.
When you say it's not because of the weather, it's not because of the policies on their own, they were not necessarily disastrous, at least not at the level of the Great Famine. What rendered them so catastrophic was the vehicle of collectivization. This is a big claim. This is a bold claim, and it shows that you think about the material in a specific way, and it's good.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't agree personally, but I believe, but I would appreciate a paper arguing that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So go for it. And if I would put extra time on this essay, would be to hit this point, really, really well. It doesn't have to be longer.
Yeah.
Just this kind of length. How many words is that? It's too long even. I believe that you need about 240 words to do this. Something like this, 280 words. In these 280 words, whether it's in 3 short paragraphs, whether it's in 1 paragraph, it doesn't matter. But if you really try to bring this kind of points together and argue this, in a clear, because this has to be clear.
Yeah.
This is the only thing that it's missing at the moment. Only the clarity. The moment that when you explain it to me, I'm seeing it. I have it in front of me. It doesn't come as clear through this writing here. So just take a little bit extra time, perhaps, to tailor this paragraph better.
Okay.
The topic sentence is going to perhaps help you. So if you write a very simple, very, very simple topic sentence where you say, it was not the weather alone, it was not the policies alone, it was how the outcomes were distorted via collectivization. Collectivization, you can have a kind of a point there and then say collectivization was the vehicle to the Great Famine.
Yes.
Yeah. The moment that you have this kind of topic sentence, I already have understood exactly what comes. So even if you get muddier in the or more complex or a little bit more obscure in the rest of the paragraph, it's not going to be a problem because I'm going to be able to understand it, to follow it.
Yeah, I agree.
So try to have like a very clear topic sentence saying exactly this, the idea exactly as you have it in your mind. It's very clear as you have it in your mind, and you just said it to me.
Yeah.
Try to put this in a kind of structured topic sentence, and then have a go for the rest of the paragraph. One thing that I would like to point out, you know what makes it more difficult to follow? Things like this. It's a very nice quote, but it doesn't help you make this point. It's clear that Mao had the idea of collectivization, and this is clear. You don't have to repeat it here or add stuff in the paragraph that doesn't argue particularly this point. If your topic sentence was that Mao greatly pushed for collectivization, then you can have the quote. But this is not the topic of the paragraph, right?
Yeah.
Try to, particularly in this paragraph, because it's going to be a hard one to write, at least. Try to only put the things that argue your thing, nothing else. Everything that it's quotes, everything that you need nothing of this. This has to be plain, simple. Perhaps you have some data. That's it.
Okay. Yeah, I agree.
So try to clean up your act here, because it's going to help you and clarify your own thoughts. The second thing that I would advise you, there was no longer... When you say free writing occurred, here, don't become abstract, or try to avoid becoming abstract without doing this, such as... So you're talking about problem of free writing. Yeah? Free writing on what? Because free writing, I mean, based on what you write here, I could imagine like free writing what? On irrigation, for example. That some people were working on irrigation and others did not, and they were just stealing the irrigation from the others. What was the free riding problem here?
Right, I see what you mean. Okay.
Just find an example. It can be such as, I don't know, this you have to look it up, but if it is really irrigation, which I don't think, it's, such as abuse of irrigation systems. I don't know. But this is going to be enough. But this is going to help such a complex paragraph become concrete.
Yeah.
You need concreteness here. It's a difficult point you're trying to make.
Mm-hmm.
It has to be concrete. This is going to make it sound easy.
Yeah.
And the other thing is... So this was... I will give you an example and you tell me if you like it more. You say here, this was further exacerbated by the communal dining halls who did not carefully ration the food. So this becomes so concrete that perhaps it becomes even questionable, because I'm not sure personally, perhaps you know more about the data, I'm not sure if communal dining halls had such a severe effect on their own. So if you're not certain either, a way to put it is that this was further exacerbated by other policies, such as communal dining. And then, you are safe.
Yeah.
Because the communal dining was only one example of the community life they had under this kind of communes collectivization reality.
Mm-hmm.
So it was only one. I'm pretty sure that if we read a book on this, we're just going to find so many effects and from this kind of life that had on the Great Famine. So just try to be a little bit more tentative, and because of course you cannot analyze everything, but what you analyze is just an example.
Yeah.
So, and it's enough if you only have one example. So
Yeah.
it's a strong example.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Okay, so perhaps keep this in mind. Yeah, I really like this point.
Which point?
This idea you have about this.
Okay.
I like to have the collectivization as a separate kind of policy. You know, you separate it from the whole package of policies, and you make something grand out of it. You make it like you know, this kind of factor that takes inputs, you know, policy inputs, and turns them into disastrous outputs. So
Yeah.
I really like the idea. So for me, it was I was very engaged with your argument. So if this it tells you something, it's good.
Okay.
Just one thing, I will have to put a glass of water. Oh.
No worries.
I told you, I asked you to have a more balanced discussion for collectivization.
Yeah.
There is this argument, and I told you I'm going to give you an example. There is this argument. What was it? It was the references I told you before. So that was the initial reason why I had put them down here. Yeah. So Brahma here, let me make it bigger so you can read it on my screen. So according to Brahma, the communes, so that was part of the collectivization, right? Because they emerged together. They were so I think that to some extent you can talk about them interchangeably. It's not absolutely true what I'm saying, but so the communes were key institutions for labor accumulation. They were, in a sense, an efficient way of using and managing surplus labor. And they were the greatest contributor to irrigation projects. So if there were really great infrastructure projects done during the Maoist period, which they were done, there is no question about it. Yeah. According to Bramall, at least, that was because of the efficient management of surplus labor that was occurring via the communes. Yeah, but if you read Madison on page 75, he argues for the exactly opposite thing. So he argues that the communes were responsible for losing labor productivity, leading to eventually negative total factor productivity. Yeah. So perhaps this is a point that you would like to add into. I will give you an example of how you can add this. Okay, let's say that this is the perfect paragraph that you just wrote, and you said that collectivization was a vehicle to the Great Famine. And here, how I would put it, perhaps before or after this paragraph, I would have, just a short sentence saying, despite Bramall's argument that communes were an efficient way of absorbing surplus labor, it appears that the evidence perhaps aligns more with Madison. How do you spell Madison? Is it with double D?
Yeah, double D.
With Madison's argument that communes led to a historically negative TFP. So this is the only thing. This makes it balanced. So this is what I mean with balance. It doesn't have to have a whole paragraph that balances the rest of the essay out. This is not the point, because you have an argument. Of course, you're going to argue for your argument, not for other people's arguments. But it's important when we're asking for balanced arguments, it's that you acknowledge the fact that there are other views, although you decide because of the evidence you chose, you decide for the other side.
Yes, I get it. Okay.
Yeah. So this is what it's going to make it balanced. So don't think about a great movement in your essay, but just a little bit of a hint.
Okay. Yeah, I agree.
Okay. Okay. Explain policy. Yeah. Okay. We talked about this stuff, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. This is important. I would definitely put this in the essay. This is important. The relationship with USSR, it's very important.
Yeah, I agree.
And think that USSR was perhaps the only power on the international stage that had still diplomatic relations with China. So it was its only option. So this is why it's important to have it in. Ending statement. What do you mean ending statement? Is this a conclusion? No.
No. Ending statement to the paragraph, basically. I tried to just put one topic sentence at the beginning.
Yeah.
And one ending statement to just lead it on to the next paragraph, if that makes sense. But it obviously it changes and it takes form as you write the essay, so it's a bit difficult to think of what to put in. Yeah.
This is good. This is how a first draft, in my opinion, should look like. There are many people that make it much faster to a more final thing. My drafts look like this.
Okay.
And it's good because I can always go back and take the right things out. So you see here this desire to see China's industry flourish. It was not a desire. This is what I mean. It downgrades the severity of the situation China was in.
Yeah.
All of this we have talked about. Okay. All of this we have talked about? Yeah.
Yeah, this is just the essay as a bulk. Right. And then the conclusion should be at the end too. So that's pretty much where the essay is at the moment. May
I see just my notes on your previous draft, just in case I have something else to add?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. The political motivations, blaming the weather. Here I have the references ready. So this is the political motivations blaming the weather. I don't know what kind of reference I gave you before. This is Bramall 142 and Madison page 62.
Yeah, got both of them. Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect.
Well, this is just an assertion. Yeah.
So you're saying that the communal walls could have been correlated with the...
No, it's the way you have phrased it. I remember what it was. You say that there is evidence to support this view. But this here, because the food shortages and the communal dining occurred the same year. This is correlation. This is not causation.
Right.
You're arguing for causation. You have it better phrased in your other script.
Okay.
Just make sure that because this is not an argument. If two things happen coincidentally, it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
So whoever did this number 16 reference, think about it.
Okay.
And if you have data on this communal dining thing, this is good.
Okay.
Do you have any data, like how much food they threw away, perhaps, or how do you measure the efficiency of communal dining?
Yeah, I'll look for some data. I agree. It does definitely need some data at that point.
Not a lot. Just an example. Like, for example, during that year, data shows this. End of story.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's just a little bit. It's a very nice argument, but I want to believe it. But I cannot believe it if it's just like this.
Yeah, agreed.
Collective ownership. Yeah, this is how communes, what I told you before, so that the communes had also, according to some scholars, positive contributions. This again, this is the inductive argument, yeah. This is very good. This I really liked. Political rank alone can explain up to 16 of the excess death rate. This is very good. And you have something else that I really liked, and I don't know if that was part of your readings or you came up with a wording. Where do you have this? The revolutionary credentials. How the revolutionary credentials were tied to the notion that they have to punish the rural population.
Mm-mm.
So this is a very, very nice argument.
Yeah. Okay. I'll keep that one.
So discipline involved themselves in a greatly post-campaign. The intelligence package still production massively. So all these things, by the way, are good, right?
Yeah.
You understand? So this is really good, especially during an industrialization phase.
Yes.
So massive irrigation work, steel work, all of these things are very important to early industrialization phases.
Yeah. So would you include that within the industrialization part of paragraph 3 or within the political economy part? That particular sentence that you've got highlighted? Because that's what I struggled to know where to put that one.
Let me think. I would put it where you're talking about the food security, that the turn of the economy towards a wartime economy, which compromised food security ultimately.
Yeah. So movement of the people into backyards.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
okay, fine.
on one hand, it was, you can see this as a positive step during an early industrialization phase, or a developing nation. Yeah, those are very good steps for capital accumulation. So this is how you do it, right? But at what expense in this case?
Yeah.
So, and it's obvious, perhaps those officials, when they were on the ground, they didn't have this kind of tension in front of their eyes. Perhaps they didn't see the dilemma that it's either this or that. But that was the case.
Yeah.
Okay. So
I'll work them up.
And of course, all this stuff that they invested in, the steel work, the irrigation work, the labor-intensive project, all this created an amazing legacy for the reforming years that followed. So it gave the push to the Chinese economy posthumously, let's say. So not during that phase, because we had the Great Famine and all this kind of thing, things didn't go as expected, but it created a legacy for the reforming years to step on and make the economy take off.
Yeah. Agreed.
I really like the demand for calories. Personally, I like this kind of discourse. This is very, very academic-like. I don't usually understand it, so it's a little bit too obscure for me, but I love reading analysis of calorie demands and stuff like this for populations.
Okay.
So if you find a nice way of keeping it in, that's fine. Okay, this word, I didn't see being used in your other draft now, or at least not in a problematic way, but you use it a lot in this. So radically, what does it mean? You say that these officials obediently and radically
pushed through with mass. Oh, I guess I just mean like radically. I don't know what I mean by that. Yeah, maybe it's a bit too strong. I think I mean that because they were kind of done it. They did do it out of force as well. They did it well, there was incentives for them to obviously push through with Mao's orders, but there was also the idea of being blackmailed into pushing through. So maybe radically, yeah, you're right, it's not the right word.
You know why I didn't like the word?
Yeah.
So you mean that they went a little bit out of their way, or out of what somebody would think as proper official behavior in order to push for Mao's orders? Radically, I don't like the word because it's too abstract. So what is radical, and it's also used as a critique to communist regimes by liberal regimes. So liberal people will say to communists or anarchists that they're radical. But if you ask the anarchists, probably they think that it's radical what they do in neoliberal settings. That you have 400 million of homeless people, but then you have 120 million empty houses and flats.
Right.
So this is for me radical, for example. So it doesn't. What I'm trying to say is that it doesn't mean anything out of context.
Okay.
It sounds again qualitative critique rather than meaningful critique.
Yeah.
So you can skip this radical. There is a way, there was somewhere you used it and it was right to the point. That it was radical behavior. When you say, for example, when you say that I'm going to feed all the urban people, but let the millions of the rural East to die, that's radical behavior, right?
Yeah.
There I get it. This is something radical going on. But just radically, it doesn't tell me a lot. Here, which resulting this is again the passive voice and using direct verbs. For example, I just try to give you some examples. Yeah. So you say that the rural areas of China, which resulting in a great deal of starvation. What about this? You cut it here. And you say, hence the rural population famished.
Yeah.
You don't have to do it. This is just a style thing, right? If you like it, you keep it in your mind and you try to tailor your script like this. If you don't like it, forget about it. But I believe it's my duty to tell you this. A bias towards industry. And then we have here was if you could, but now you have a different structure, so that's fine. But I like the idea of this paragraph here that you show you describe a bias and a preference towards the urban and industrial sector at the expense of the rural sector.
Yeah.
And one way to deduce this from Chinese history, it's as you say, the prioritization of the welfare of the urban population by diverting human capital from the agrarian to the industrial sector. So what you describe in your main script, what you describe as a movement from the rural to the industrial sector, this is, of course, economically speaking and mathematically speaking, there was this kind of migration of labor force. On the other hand, you can also think about it as a preference, an official preference of towards urban population by diverting human capital. So it's a diversion of human capital. You stagnate one sector in order to inject it to another sector.
Okay.
So this is what you write basically here. I just put it in a more concise way here. And when you write about economic history, a better word for well-being is welfare, because they're not exactly the same things, but well-being is something a little bit more obscure, and welfare, you can measure it. Yeah. At least we think we can measure it. Very good. Make it clear. Public policy increased. Yeah, we talked about this. Food security. This is a topic sentence again. Here I have another example for you. So the blind pursuit of industrialization, which arose of the Great Leap Forward, had detrimental effects on the rural population. So this is just another opportunity to talk about topic sentences. Can you see what my problem with this topic sentence would be?
The blind pursuit. That.
No. Let's say that you have argued about it and this is right. Okay, but as a topic sentence.
Detrimental effects on the which arose out of the Great Leap Forwards had detrimental. Well, first of all, it kind of only assumes that industrialization was due to the Great Leap Forwards and not because of the idea that we were coerced into it as well. And it also just says that it assumes that that's the only thing that had detrimental effects on the rural population alone. So I mean, it's a bit like
it doesn't necessarily. It just says that the Great Leap Forwards had detrimental effects on the rural population. So there could have been other things having similar effects, but so that's fine. You're just focusing on the Great Leap Forwards.
Okay.
It's this is not clear. It's too generic. Detrimental effects on the rural population. Why don't you become even clearer? Say it affected. It impoverished the rural population. It's a stylish thing again, right? Use an active verb. It's not about having an effect or an impact on something. This makes it all too abstract and too generic.
So what would you suggest putting there instead?
Now it depends on how you would how you would describe it. But here I have some examples. Okay. So for example, I have here it is enough affected. So affected is too generic and it will pay off using concrete language. So perhaps did it impoverish the rural population? So this is concrete, right? Did it marginalize the rural population? Did it disenfranchise it? Did it deplete it?
Yeah.
So this is just a discussion again. This is just food for thought. But imagine a topic sentence that says this.
Okay.
The policies of the Great Leap Forward depleted the rural population. Topic sentence.
Okay.
Just this, it's clear what you're going to be saying. It's direct, it's active, it has movement. And in contrast, this one, the Great Leap Forward, had detrimental effects on the real population. Although it's correct, it's soft. It's becoming flat, and you are arguing something very strong here. So it doesn't fit the motion of your argument. Let's say.
Yeah.
Okay. So here I have marked the I believe. This is the one of the very few things that I would tell you don't put it in. Yeah, stay away from that. These markers will take marks away from this.
Yeah.
You can correct it very easily. You say I argue.
Okay.
Yeah. And you're done. Yeah, we talked about this. Yeah, just something that I didn't tell you before. So here at the Great Leap, when you introduce the Great Leap Forward, you can just put the first time. Yeah, exactly. GLP. Just put a parenthesis, or even make it even like I do it like this. Henceforth, GLP. And then I only use GLP.
Okay.
This is cool. For if you want to say words, it works.
Cool. I'll change that around.
So, and you have a new title, I saw.
I'm gonna come up with the title as the last
thing. Okay.
I want to see what kind of essay I produce, and then shape the title around my essay.
Good idea.
So I'll work on that, or we can discuss that in next.
Whatever you want, but because I really like your essay, I would like to that you have a nice, engaging title as well. I think you can sell it well, and you can make something nice between. Try to keep it. It has an amazing structure at the moment. Your essay, right? You start and you say, "Was it the weather?" No. Was it the policy? No. Was it the people? No. What was it? It was collectivization that turned everything into a possibility that led to the famine.
Yeah.
So you have a very now I just said it a little bit too crude because it's a much more nuanced essay overall. But this is a nice flow on the essay, and it's engaging.
Okay. Cool.
It's really, really nice. Yeah.
Perfect. Right.
Is there something else you would like to discuss for tonight?
I think this is enough to get me working on the second draft now.
Okay.
So I'm going to put all those things that we discussed today, look at those extra readings, put that all into force, and then think I'm hoping to maybe have something done by tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
If I carry on working on it this evening, I should have made some improvement at least.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe we can have like a short discussion tomorrow if you're free, or on Monday. I plan to discuss the essay probably a few times before I hand it in with you. So I guess every time I do a new draft, then we can take a look at it. And also, I guess with this Google Doc, you can, I can just kind of tell you to maybe have a look at it as it is, and then we can then meet after that if that's okay with you.
Yeah, that's okay. You should just know that so tomorrow I'm going to be available. After so after 7:00 tomorrow.
Yeah. Okay. I'll write that down.
After 7:00, you should know that on Friday I'm unavailable. I'm not available at all.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine.
On Friday, so you just keep it in mind. And then within the week I'm available. It's not a bad availability. You prefer evenings, so my evenings are fine.
Okay.
I'm thinking.
Yeah. If I can do a daytime, is there any days during the week you can do a daytime? Just out of curiosity, or is it just mainly evening? Because I'm happy.
No, I can do day and evenings as long as I know it, a day or two before. So for tomorrow, for me, it's not a problem. If we schedule it now, and because I need to make the rest of the plan.
Yeah, I understand.
Okay.
Okay, I'm just trying to think.
As long as you tell me before, like a day before, I'm flexible because I can organize some things.
Yeah. How about tomorrow? But we don't probably need to meet for as long as we did today.
Yeah.
So what if tomorrow we have just a short discussion?
Yeah.
Is that okay with you?
Of course.
So would something around like 7 or 8 p.m. be okay?
Let's do it 8 p.m.
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
It's 8 p.m. and then we can just have a quick run through of the essay as it is tomorrow, and then I'll work on just trying to get the second draft done by then.
Good. Okay.
Yeah, perfect.
All right.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. I hope I helped you a bit here, and and yeah, good work. Very good work. Just keep showing up. Okay.
Thank you very much.
No problem. Bye bye. Have a nice evening.
Bye bye. You too.